If you want to improve your piping skills, these 4 exercises are a perfect way to start.
First, let's prepare the cream we'll use for our practice. We'll be making Italian meringue. You'll find the complete recipe for this meringue in the description below this video. Place the egg whites in your stand mixer, combine the sugar and water in a saucepan, and start cooking the syrup. Once the syrup reaches 113 to 114 degrees Celsius, start whipping the egg whites at a medium-low speed, just enough for them to become lightly foamy. When the syrup reaches 121 degrees Celsius, increase the mixer speed slightly and begin slowly pouring the syrup into the egg whites. Don't pour it directly onto the whisk, otherwise it will throw the syrup all around the bowl and much less of it will actually reach the egg whites. Instead, pour it down the side of the bowl so the syrup blends smoothly into the egg whites and creates a smooth, elastic meringue. Personally, I think Italian meringue is the best and also one of the most affordable options for practicing with a piping bag. Keep whipping until the meringue has completely cooled. If you stop while it's still too warm, it may start collapsing inside the bowl. Once you reach a beautiful, smooth and creamy consistency like this, we're ready to begin our training. Now prepare your piping bag. If you'd like to learn more about piping bags, don't forget to watch the dedicated video on my channel, where I explain how to choose the right bag, how to fit a piping tip correctly, and how to work with it. Today I'm using a 14mm round tip. Of course you can choose any round tip you like, but in my opinion 14mm is the perfect size for this type of practice. Fill the piping bag, but don't put in too much meringue. The more filling you put inside, the harder it becomes to control the pressure with your hand. And today's practice is really about combining movement with pressure. Once you fill at the bag, twist the top closed, and now we're finally ready for our first exercise. Before we begin, remember this. If you're right-handed, your right hand controls the pressure, while your left hand controls the direction of the piping bag. Take a ruler or anything with a straight edge, and let's begin with straight lines. Hold the tip slightly above the surface. Using pressure from your right hand and while moving the bag forward, simply follow the ruler. The goal is to pipe line whose diameter matches the exact diameter of your piping tip. This is where we begin training the coordination between pressure and movement, and you'll keep using exactly the same coordination throughout all the following exercises. Straight lines are the easiest place to start, especially because the ruler gives you a perfect guide. Try to keep the line as straight as possible while maintaining a constant balance between the pressure you're applying and the speed of your movement. Whenever you need to reduce the pressure, your movement should slow down as well. If you increase the pressure, your movement has to become faster. Sometimes an air bubble will appear inside a bag. When that happens, simply stop for a moment and then continue piping from exactly the same place. This is what happens when your movement becomes faster than your pressure. Now let's try the opposite. If you apply too much pressure while moving too slowly, the cream starts to wave from side to side and once again you lose control over both its thickness and direction. So that's our first exercise, straight lines. Whenever you scrape the meringue back from your work surface, always give it a gentle stir before using it again. That will bring back its smooth, creamy and elastic consistency. Now let's move on to the next exercise. Spirals. It's the simplest form of circular piping. Start by piping a small circle in the center, then continue building the spiral from the middle outwards. Keep the piping tip high enough above the surface, while gently resting each new turn against the previous one you've already piped. The goal is to create a spiral where the shape of the piping tip remains perfectly visible, while leaving absolutely no gaps between each turn. So let the cream gently slide down along the outside edge of the previous circle, allowing every new turn to sit perfectly next to the last one. A relaxed circular movement is one of the best foundations for every other piping technique you'll learn later. Now we change the angle. so you can clearly see that the piping tip stays about 2.5 to 3 centimeters above the surface. The cream isn't being spread or pressed onto the table, it's simply being laid down. You're placing it gently while gradually increasing the diameter of the spiral. That movement will become very useful in our next exercise, which is just a little more challenging. Pipe as many spirals as you like. The more you repeat them, the more natural the movement will become, and the more comfortable you'll feel controlling both the pressure and the movement together. Let's move on. Our next exercise is one of the most challenging circular movements you'll practice. We'll be piping perfect circles using only a guide. Take cake rings or any round cutters of different sizes. Dip them lightly into flour and tap them onto your work surface to leave visible circles that will guide your piping. Now you'll simply follow these circles. But don't try to pipe directly over the center of the flour line. Instead, always choose either the inside edge or the outside edge of the guide. That way you'll always be able to see the flour line while you're piping. If you cover the guide completely with cream, you'll lose your reference almost immediately, making it much harder to control the shape of the circle. Smaller circles are naturally much easier. They're also much more forgiving when you make small mistakes. The larger the circle becomes, the more difficult the exercise is. Every tiny change in pressure, every small change in speed, and every slight movement of your hand becomes much more visible on a large circle. The moment you lose sight of your guide, it's very easy for the circle to stop looking perfectly round. From this angle you can see the ideal hand position. Keep the piping tip just above the surface. Guide the piping back with your left hand while your right hand controls the pressure. Prepare circles of different sizes. Don't keep practicing only one diameter. Alternate between small circles and large ones. That way your hands will gradually get used to different movements. Our next exercise is piping individual portions of cream. Start by trying to pipe 4 or 5 portions that are exactly the same height, the same width, and the same size. Once you're comfortable with that, move on to the next exercise. Try building the cream upwards. Move the piping back vertically and pull the cream as high as you can. It doesn't matter if it falls over afterwards. The goal isn't to make a perfect decoration. The goal is simply to stretch the cream upwards as much as possible. Now try resting your hand on the work surface. That extra point of contact helps stabilize both the piping bag and your movement. It also gives you a consistent height while you're piping. Whenever possible, I recommend using that support. It works especially better for lower decorations, but the moment you start building taller shapes, your hand has to leave the table. From that point on, the stability depends entirely on you and on how much you've practiced. Just like with the circles, the spirals, and the straight lines, don't keep making exactly the same size over and over again. Try different sizes. Watch how the cream behaves. Notice how it reacts every time you change the pressure. Always remember, this is practice. You're not decorating a real cake, so don't be afraid to experiment. Try staying close to the surface and squeezing quickly, then stay higher and squeeze more gently. Experiment with different combinations. Every single attempt teaches you something. Try to understand what happened. Describe it to yourself or even record it with your phone and watch it back afterwards. If you stay low and apply strong pressure, the cream spreads out into a wide flat shape with a slight dip in the center. The finishing point changes too. If you pull away quickly, you'll get one shape. If you pull away slowly, you'll get another. Practice as many different finishes as you can. And finally, finish today's training with your own freestyle. Relax your hands, relax your mind. Create any pattern you like. Choose something that feels natural to you. Watch how one line overlaps another. Observe how the cream behaves. See what happens as one ribbon crosses over the next. Experiment with anything that comes to mind. You don't have to show it to anyone. This is just for you. Think of it like a painter making sketch before creating the final artwork. I hope you enjoyed this video. Most importantly, enjoy working with your piping bag. Keep practicing, keep experimenting, and most of all, enjoy the process. I'll see you again in the next video. Take care. Ciao.